So let's take a breath together right now. This month of October, our theme is bloom where you're planted. Bloom where you're planted. Bloom where you're planted. That's what we're talking about this month. Blooming meaning to flower, to come into full expression, right where you are right now. You don't have to wait for conditions to change. You don't have to wait for things to get better. You don't have to wait for anything external to happen. We have everything within us. Everything is already within us that allows us to come into full expression of who we were created to be right here and right now. When we think about the tiny acorn having everything within it to become a mighty oak tree, that's almost unimaginable. And that's the same way it is with each one of us. We have everything within us already to bloom into full expression of what God wants us to be as each one of us individually. So that's what we're looking at this month. How do we bloom where we're planted? How do we how do we make the most of where we are? How do we be the best us? How can I be the best me right where I am right now? No matter what's going on, no matter how I got here, without blame, without judgment, without criticism, without angst or anything like that. How do I make the best of this situation? How do I be the very best me right here and right now? That's what blooming where you're planted is all about. And so in blooming, you have to grow, and in growing we have to change, and that is not always easy. And when we think about growing, we hear about growing pains, and just in reading about growing pains, everything says that growing pains are natural. And that's my topic today, growing gains, because I don't think that we have to go through growing pains. It's a matter of perspective. It's a matter of how we look at it. It's a matter of how we respond to growth. That determines whether or not we experience growing pains or growing gains. And so I'm inviting you this morning to look at, how do we experience growing pains? How do we, as we grow through this process, wherever it is we are right now, whatever it is we're experiencing right now, how do these things that happen become growing gains for each one of us? Because, to grow, we have to change. And what that means is we have to learn something different. We have to do something a different way. We have to learn new lessons. We have to learn new people. We have to leave behind old people. And I don't mean old in age, but people we've known for a long time, old ways of doing things. All those things require us to, all those things happen when we get into a place of growth, of growth. And if we didn't change, we couldn't grow, because otherwise we just stay the same. And it's so easy to stay the same because we get into that comfort zone. We get into that place where it's so comfortable here, even though I don't like it, even though it's negative, it's familiar. So it's a comfort zone, and it's easier to stay right here without moving forward. It's easier to stay right here and say, oh, this is okay. And so I'm inviting you to just look, take a deep breath, and just look at, how can we grow? How can we move through whatever it is, wherever it is we are, easily and effortlessly? How can we incorporate those changes that we need to incorporate as easily as we possibly can into our lives, so that they go from being growing pains into growing pains into growing gains? Let's take a breath. I was reminded of when I first came to CLF. Rev.Sherry came in as the consultant to the board, and I had asked her to serve as an acting executive director to just help get some systems and things in place and do an assessment of what we needed to do in the administrative offices, just to help us to grow and to move forward. And whenever I ask her to help me, or I ask her for her opinion about something, the first answer she gives me is always the wrong answer. So I have to get to the place where I can get beyond that, because her answer always requires me to do something different. Her answer always requires me to not be able to stay right where I am, or to have to learn something new. And that was what happened when I came to CLF, and when she came in, and she was looking around, and she said that you guys have got to bring in technology. You've got to get more of your systems onto the cloud. You have to get them off the individual computers and get them onto the cloud. Get them onto Dropbox. Get them onto to get onto Zoom. Get onto other platforms so that you can grow. So that you are moving, as she calls it, moving forth into the 21st century, out of the Flintstone era into the 21st century. And of course, my resistance screen went way up because I've been working with her in her business over the last few years. I do some things with her, and she wanted me to learn Dropbox. I didn't want to learn that. She wanted me to learn Zoom for the last 2 years. I didn't want to do that either. And so once I was able to just take a step back, and the staff wasn't necessarily as resistant as I, but we all had a bit of resistance to having to do something different, having to learn something new, having to do things a different way. And so, but we did it, and as I said, the staff wasn't nearly as resistant as I. So we took a deep breath collectively, and we all started to learn to do things differently. I am so glad that we did, because you know what? Once COVID hit, if we had not been in the cloud, if we had not had so much of our systems onto the cloud, if we had not been using Dropbox, if we had not been using other platforms, we could not be bringing this service. We could not be working from home. It would have been so much more difficult for us to work from home. It'd been so much more difficult for us to bring the Sunday service to you on Zoom, because we would not have been prepared for it. We would not have been prepared for it. And so while I saw it initially as growing pains, as I look back at it, I realized these were growing gains that we experienced, because here we are. And yes, we have a lot more to learn. And yes, we have much more growth to experience. But look how far we've come, because we were willing to lower that resistance screen. And I've talked to you guys before about lowering the resistance screen. Just lower the resistance screen so that we can step over it, and move into doing what it is that is before us to do. And when we can recognize prospectively, when we can recognize going forward that what we are experiencing, what we are walking through are growing gains rather than growing pains. Sometimes we don't recognize that until we look back on something. I'm inviting you to be present, to be aware, to be conscious, to be awake, to know as we walk through it that we are walking through growing pains, growing gains. I'm sorry, growing gains. And what that does, it opens our minds. It opens our minds to possibilities. It opens our minds to to growth, to expansion, to being available, because God always has a greater idea. God always has a greater idea of who we are and how we are to express, how God is to express through each one of us. And that idea cannot be expressed so long as we're dealing with resistance. So long as we're dealing with resistance. And so I invite you this morning that as you are going through this time of growth, and it's a time of growth for all of us in some area of our lives, if not all areas of our lives, as you're going through this time of resistance, I'm just asking you to take a breath, take a step back, and move into that place of openness and availability, and allow that resistance screen to just be lowered. Lower that resistance screen. Lower that resistance screen so that you can hear it better, so that you can see it better, so that you can experience the allness and the fullness of who you are, the experience, the allness and the fullness of who God is, and allowing God to work fully and completely in our lives. You know, a couple of things I'd like to share with you, a couple of things I'd like you to remember. One of them is that we have to outgrow the place where we are before we can move to the next place. That's an old metaphysical expression. We have to outgrow the place where we are before we can move to the next place. And what that means is that we have to outgrow the place where we are in consciousness before we can move to the next place. Otherwise, if we grow, we can only experience that which we are in consciousness. And if we get into a situation that's beyond where we are in consciousness, we always fall back to where we are. The consciousness that obtains sustains. The consciousness that obtains sustains. That's what Ernest Holmes says. The consciousness that obtains sustains. So the consciousness that you obtain something with is a consciousness that will sustain it. So when you think about the people who you see, they have these TV shows about people who hit the lottery and won loads of money, tons of money, and a year or two later they don't have any money. It's all gone. They've blown through it. It could be millions of dollars, and they would have bought all kinds of things, had all kinds of experiences, taken all kinds of trips. But the point that I'm making about it is that the consciousness that obtained sustains. If they didn't have the consciousness of abundance, I don't care how much money you have. If you don't have the consciousness of abundance, then you can visualize and obtain certain things. You may get a house that you want, you may get a car that you want, you may get different material things that you want. But if you don't have the consciousness to sustain it, you fall right back where you were. You fall right back into the situation that you were in all the time. And so when 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 you're thinking about why can't I, if there have been experiences in your life, why do I always end up at this place? Why do I always end up not having enough money? Why do I always end up having this situation in relationships that I come into? Why do I always end up in this place? Recurring problems that we have in our lives, and all of us have them. Recurring situations that come up, and I don't care how much work we do, we always find ourselves back here. That's because there's not been a consciousness shift. We've not outgrown back here. We have to outgrow back here. We have to outgrow where we are right now. And when we outgrow where we are right now through our spiritual practice, through our desire to be in that place of abundance, if you want to experience abundance, then you have to be in that place of abundance in consciousness. You have to think abundantly. You can't have abundance and think poverty. You can't have abundance and talk about being broke all the time. You can't have abundance and talk about lack all the time in any area of your life. You can't have health and wholeness and talk about sickness all the time or complain about not feeling well all the time. You can't have those things. You've got to be in consciousness what you wish to you've got to have in consciousness what you wish to be. You've got to experience it in consciousness. And that's where our mindset comes in, just really being into a place of 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 of, of knowing exactly what we want and then being in that place. And this is not pretending, but acting as if we already have it. How does that place feel? How does it feel to have enough money? How does it feel to have good health? How does it feel to be in a wonderful love relationship, romantic relationship? How does it feel to have peace in my life? How does it feel to experience unconditional love? And then really move into that place of feeling it, of sensing it, of knowing it. How does it feel to have these things? This is how we shift our consciousness. Using the affirmations, we've been talking about affirmations for the last a few weeks. Creating affirmations for yourself, using it so that you can change your mindset about where you are, so that you can change your thinking about where you are. The reading talks about right thinking. And Ernest Holmes says that right thinking, that nothing is permanent, nothing can be permanently healed unless it is accompanied by right thinking. Nothing can be permanently healed unless accompanied by right thinking. And that right thinking cancels and erases anything that is unlike itself. Right thinking cancels and erases anything that is unlike itself. It solves all problems. It solves all difficulties. Right thinking is the answer to everything. And that's just another way of saying change your thinking, change your life. Change your thinking, change your life. Change your thinking. And that's something we have to constantly do over and over and over again. Change your thinking, change your life. Change your thinking, change your life. Change your thinking, change your consciousness. And that's what we want to do, because again, the consciousness that obtains sustains. And so in order to have the things that we want and have the kind of life that we want and to bloom where we are and to grow and to expand into what we were created to be, then we have to be of that consciousness and consciously, constantly aware of that consciousness. And so keep that in mind. Outgrow the place where you are so that you can move to the next place. You do that by lowering that lowering that screen of resistance, because the resistance will come up anytime we have to change. I know it does for me. That's sometimes my default position is resistance. And I recognize that about myself. And so I have to just take a breath and recognize when I'm in it and then just move to a place of just lowering that resistance screen, lowering that resistance screen, lowering that resistance screen, lowering that resistance screen until we can just step over it and then move forward. That's what we want. That's what we want to do. That's what we want to do. Just really, really let that resistance screen down. Let's take a breath. The other thing that I want you to keep in mind is that another principle is what we love enough will multiply and grow. What we can love enough will multiply and grow. What we love enough will multiply and grow. And that's with anything. We love the things that we give our attention to are the things that we love. And the more we give our attention to whatever it is, that will multiply and grow. And so be mindful of what you're giving your attention to. Whatever it is you're giving your attention to, you're loving that. You're loving that. If you're constantly complaining about politics or politicians, or constantly complaining about your work situation, or constantly complaining about whatever the case may be, whatever the case may be, if you're constantly complaining about it, that's what you're giving your attention to. And that's what's multiplying and growing. That's why you're experiencing more and more and more of it. And so continue to look at, what am I giving my attention to? What am I loving? Because what we love enough will multiply and grow. And that's another way of saying that energy flows where attention goes. Energy flows where attention goes. So give your attention to that which you wish to experience. Give your attention to that which you wish to experience, and love it by developing an appreciation for it. Learn how to appreciate and practice appreciation, making appreciation a part of your spiritual practice. Appreciation is an element of change. Appreciation, when we can recognize the significance or value of people or things, recognize the significance of where you are right now, recognizing the value of the lessons you're learning right now, recognizing the value and the significance of where you're planted right now, and then giving attention to that, and really appreciating where you are. I appreciate where I am right now, even though this may not be where I want to be, but just giving your attention to the significance of it. What's the significance of this? What is the lesson for me to learn right here and right now? Where do I need to grow right here and right now? What do I need to change right here and right now? And really appreciating the value of this lesson, looking at it as a blessing, the value of this. Why is this person in my life? Appreciating that person who's in your life right now, appreciating the value of it, of that person, appreciating the value of whatever the situation may be, and looking at life through the eyes of appreciation. Looking at life through the eyes of appreciation, because when we recognize the value of it, we're giving it our attention, we're learning to love it, then that's when we really can be into a place of growth. That's when we can really experience growing gains. That's when we can really experience the importance and significance of where we are right now. And even if where you are right now is not where you want to be, and it's like you're feeling down and out and just allowing yourself to have a pity party, develop an appreciation for that. Appreciate the fact that this is where I am right now. I see it. I recognize this is where I am right now. I know that I don't want to stay here. What can I do right now? Let me just take a nap. Let me take a nap. Let me move and do something different. Let me read a book. Let me move into a different mindset. But acknowledging and appreciating where I am right now. This this place where I am right now has value because it's showing me where I need to move to. It's showing me that it's time for me to move into right thinking. It's showing me that I have an opportunity to grow, to expand, to develop in a totally different kind of way. One of the greatest tools that we have in our community that we use frequently, I'm trusting, is the treatment for supply. The treatment for supply is one way that we can really shift our consciousness, one way that we can shift our consciousness to outgrow the place where we are so that we can move to the next place. It's a tool that we can use to learn to really love where we are, because it shifts our thinking. It really helps us to move into that place of divine right action, and knowing that right action is taking place in our lives at all times. It shifts our thinking because it reminds us that abundance is all around us, that love is all around us, that God is all around us, that where we are in consciousness, that what we desire is irresistibly drawn to us always. These are the kinds of things that really help us through these times of growing gains, through these times of growth, through these times of change, through these times of expansion. Just really looking at, how can I love this enough that it multiplies? Because again, whatever we love enough, whatever we give our attention to will multiply and grow. We have to just make sure that what we're giving our attention to is what we really want to have grow in our lives, what we really want to have experience in our, what we really want to experience in our lives. And so I'm inviting you to be mindful. Be mindful as we go through these days. Be mindful as we go through these times. Don't go through here this time blindly. Don't go through these times, as we talked last month when we were talking about the Great Awakening. Don't go through these times asleep. Wake up, be mindful, take charge. Take charge of your own mind, take charge of your own thinking, and be willing to change. Be willing to change. You know, we have I constantly tell people to take off the should blanket. So take off that should blanket and put on a willingness blanket. Put on a willingness blanket. Cloak yourself in willingness, because God works through our willingness. God works through our willingness. God can't work through our resistance. God can't work through our resistance. And I don't care how resistant we get. I don't care how much we stamp our feet. I don't care how much we shake our heads and say, no, no, no. God can't work through that. And even if we're saying yes with a closed heart, with a closed mind, with clenched fists, God can't work through that. We have to take a deep breath. We have to just open our arms, open our hearts, open our minds, and just allow God to work in our lives. And we do that through our willingness. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know how to bloom. I don't know how to do any of this. I don't really even like this change. And I'm willing to go through it. Let there be an and I'm willing to experience it, and I'm willing to allow God to guide me, and I'm willing to do something different. I'm willing to walk a different way. I'm willing to allow myself to be guided and directed, because I'm trusting God. And so when we can change our thinking that way, then we change our lives. When we can again lower that resistance screen, put on that willingness blanket, and appreciate, really appreciate where we are, who we are, appreciate the blessings in our lives, appreciate the blessing that we are in life, appreciate ourselves, appreciate our capacity to learn, our capacity to adapt, our capacity to do things differently, our capacity to grow. How exciting is that? Let's take a breath together. How exciting is that? How exciting is that? We get to the place where we learn to take care of ourselves. We get to the place where we learn to really open our minds and open our hearts so that we can be all that we were created to be. We get to the place where we can bloom. That's what blooming is all about. That's what blooming is all about, being all that we were created to be, flowering into full expression, flowering into full expression, full expression. And when we are in full expression, it's because God is fully expressing in and through and as each one of us. And that's the that's the goal. That's what blooming is about, full expression. When we are fully expressing the creator, when we are fully expressing that which created us, and when we are fully expressing the allness and the fullness of God. That's what growing gains are all about. As we grow through these times, we grow through them easily and effortlessly, knowing that we are guided and directed. every step of the way, knowing that we are guarded and protected every step of the way, knowing that we can trust that power and that presence within us. We can trust that power and that presence within us to show us every step ahead of us. Even though we can't see it, even though we don't know it, we trust as we walk forward. We trust as we walk forward. These are the growing gains that we get to experience. These are the growing gains that we get to experience easily, effortlessly, with love, with grace, with God. So let's take a breath together as we just move into this place of prayer time. We move into this place of releasing and letting go. We move into this place of openness and availability. We move into this place of oneness, just knowing that that one power, that one presence, that one mind, that one life, that one breath, that one source, that one that I choose to call God is the only one, the only power, the only presence, the only mind, the only life, the only breath, the only activity is God. The only. And this onlyness that is God is my very life. This onlyness that is God is the life of each of us here this day. And so, from this place of awareness that this life is my life, this place of unification with this one, I speak this word for us this day, for each of us this day. Just know that we are knowing that we are completely surrounded always by the love of God, the light of God, that we're always guided, we're always directed, we're always protected, we're always lifted up, we're always comforted, we're always shown the way. And so I speak the word of wholeness, I speak a word of healing in the body temple of anyone who needs healing in the body temple this day, knowing that every organ, cell, tissue function of the body is experiencing that radiant healing presence of God. For anyone needing a healing this day in the body temple, for anyone needing a healing this day in the body of affairs, I know that the abundance, the prosperity that is God is right where each of them is, that all needs are being met in each and every moment of each and every day. That all needs are met, no matter what we call it, that need. God is showing up as the thing itself. And that everyone is experiencing more and more abundance, more and more prosperity, more and more health, more and more wholeness, more and more joy, more and more peace, more and more harmony as we let go of the resistance of any kind. We let go of doubts, we let go of fear, we let go of expectations and we move into a place of expectancy. And when we move into a place of expectancy, we open our hearts and we open our minds to the goodness of God that is always being revealed, that is always being revealed in and through and as our lives. This prayer goes out to anyone needing a prayer this day, all those who are affected by COVID or any other illness, all those families who have lost loved ones, people who may be experiencing illness themselves. I know that God is in the midst of everything. Those who are affected by natural disasters and fires and hurricanes and whatever we name them, whatever there is that is unlike that power and that presence of God, know that God is right in the midst of everything that's going on. Everything that's going on. God is in the midst of it. That healing is happening everywhere, even when we can't see it. I know that healing is happening everywhere, for I know that God is everywhere. And so I'm just going to pause momentarily as I open this circle of prayer so that you may include the names of anyone you'd like held in prayer this day. You may include their names silently or loud, but you may speak them now. And so for all those whose names were spoken here this day, I know that God is right where each of them is, blessing and keeping them. God is everywhere present. There's no spot where God is not. And so I know indeed that all is well. I know indeed that all is well, for I know that all is God. And so I simply say, thank you, Father, Mother God. Thank you for the word spoken. Thank you for the perfect manifestation of the word spoken here this day. I simply allow it to be now. And so it is.